All right. Again, this is Big 12 Insiders. This is Brien Hanley here. Back with our fall preview, football fall preview. We got Jeremy Clark covering TCU for 24/7 Sports. Jeremy, how is it going today, my man?
It's hot down here in Texas, man. You know this.
Yes, it is. It is hot. A little bit unbearable. I was in Kansas City over the weekend, and there it was in the 70s. I couldn't believe it, number one, but I didn't know what that felt like. And I came back, and here we are, 104, and it's just going to be that way. So, but it is what it is, man. Thanks for thanks for taking the time to join us to talk a little TCU football. Last year obviously didn't go the way that TCU fans, everybody, it just didn't go the way that people that follow the Horned Frogs, it didn't go the way that they wanted it to go. There's some reasons for it. Like I know we talked before, lost a lot of NFL players from the previous season. So sometimes, your team's not going to be good or as good, but also I think it's a little deceiving because they lost a lot of close games too. So let's take a little dive in here. First off, kind of give me the rundown of what the overall program, what people, fans, coaches, players, what everybody feels about the program now, gone through camp a few weeks. What's the overall feeling of the program right now?
I think the number one thing, just talking with coaches, talking with players, just comparing this year to last year, everyone's talking about there's more of a buy-in. You had so many new faces this year. There were 17 guys, 17 or 19 guys, I always forget that number, that arrived on campus as transfers from the portal in January. And typically when you have that high amount of number, you just don't really know what you're going to get in off season, right, especially going into spring camp. But the overall feeling that we've heard from talking with players in the media and just talking around the program, getting some feedback, the buy-ins there. There's no selfishness. That's the big word that keeps coming up is there just doesn't seem to be any selfishness compared to last year. And I tell a lot of people just looking, and you hit the nail on the top of the head, Brian, with just talking about that senior leadership they had in that national championship run. There was a lot of seniors there. You had Max Duggan, which will go down as one of the top quarterbacks in TCU history. Maybe not statistically, but in everyone's mind, he's one of the top quarterbacks. Sure. Just for just the pure warrior mentality he had. But that year, they won so many close games because they were an older team. They knew how to finish those games. They were smart. And last year, they were in similar games. Not as many, but they were in similar games, and they lost those games. That was a big difference. They were 9 points away from being 8-4 instead of 5-7. So this year, Sonny Dykes and staff did a great job bringing in those transfer kids. They brought in guys that have a ton of college football experience. So that's giving you optimism. Through the first few weeks of camp, you've got a new defensive coordinator in Andy Avalos who is bringing excitement. He's bringing pressure from all different angles. It really, truly, honestly reminds me of kind of what we used to see in Gary Patterson's style of defense, just an aggressive style, fast defense. They're having a good time, having fun out there, and the offense is in the second year of Kendall Browse. So there's optimism all throughout the program. You've got everything from an older team, a team that seems to have the chemistry, a team that's in the second year of an offensive system, a team that has a new defensive scheme that seems to play well to the players they have on the roster. Mm-hmm. But we don't know any of this, how well it's going to work out until they go out to Palo Alto in a few weeks to play Stanford. That's a very physical team, but I'm anxious to see. I keep getting asked, JC, what is your prediction? Is this a 10-win team? Is it a 12-win team? Is it 7 wins? I don't know right now. I really don't know. I feel like what I'm seeing this fall camp is better than what I saw last fall camp. But again, it's still a lot of unknowns right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you get into fall camp and you see stuff, it's like, yeah, I like it. I think it looks good. It can be good. But until you start seeing the live bullets, and again, I know that's a cliche, but until you get out and you play somebody else, it's hard to know exactly what everything is going to look like, because it's one thing to do it in a scrimmage type setting against teammates. It's another thing to do it against somebody in a real football game. So looking forward to seeing that game against Stanford. For TCU. Like you said, I know Stanford's been down a little bit, but they're still a physical football team. And I think it's kind of pivotal for the season for TCU to be able to go out there and win. I really believe that TCU is going to have a bounce back year. They got too much talent within the roster. That's my personal feelings. That they just got too much talent. They recruit well. They've gotten people out of the transfer too well for it not to get turned around. I don't know what that looks like. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later, but I just think they have too much talent for it to go the same way it did last year. Digging in a little bit, you kind of mentioned the defense, getting a new defensive coordinator, kind of maybe it looks a little bit like the Gary Patterson days. What are some of the strengths that you've seen so far out of the Home Frogs' new defense?
Man, I just talking from the top, just what I mentioned earlier, just the aggressiveness from all different angles. You're seeing defensive ends pressure the quarterback. You're seeing linebackers. You're seeing safeties coming on in blitz. You're seeing corners coming on in blitz. And they disguise their coverages so well. And this is a kind of a little nugget, and I've shared it on my site. But the other night they had their first scrimmage, and I want to say between the first, second, and third team defense, I think they totaled pretty close to 12 or 13 sacks on that offense. So and it's not just coming from a defensive end or a linebacker. It's really coming from all different angles. But I'm really excited about the defensive line. They lost Dom Williams. That was a big loss. But
right.
Tommen Mitchell's had an extraordinary camp. I really like what he's doing. He's stepped into that role. Not going to be a big stat guy, but he's going to draw double teams. He's going to plug up the middle. He's going to allow Caleb Fox, who's playing defensive line right next to him, to make some plays. And the surprise that I really like through 12 practices is Cooper McDonald. He's another guy that they got from the transfer portal. Didn't get to TCU until the summer. Okay. He just looks the part. I mean, he's a physical guy. He's came in and played that stud position. He's battled Devin Dill, the Tulane transfer. Devin was here in the spring. Got to learn a little bit more about the scheme, but Cooper's came in, made a lot of plays. He had an interception the other night in that scrimmage. He's pressured the quarterback. He's a big physical guy. He's 6'3", probably about 230, 240, can run, can play defensive end, can play the slot. And really they've been excited about his development and how he's kind of emerged to help out that defense. And that's one thing that you mentioned earlier. This team does have a ton of athletes. It has a ton of athletes. It has a ton of playing experience. And so that's one thing that gets me really excited. But the linebacker room is quite possibly the most talented room. You've got a guy like Caleb Elarms-Orr, who was all Pac-12 last year, led Cal in tackles, chose TCU over Ohio State. He's battling Johnny Hodges at that one of those linebacker positions. Well, all Johnny Hodges did, he missed most of last season, but 2 years ago, he's an all Big 12 linebacker. Then you have Nnamdi Obiazor. Nnamdi Obiazor was another all Big 12 linebacker last year, and he's the guy that has been the most consistent player on the defensive side of the ball this spring and really this fall camp. Just keeps making plays. They have really high expectations for him, and I do too. I mean, he's a guy that just fits that defense so tremendously well. He's big, he's athletic, and he's smart. He just doesn't get caught out of place too often. So the defensive side of the ball is kind of what's got me the most excited. But again, do we go back and say, well, they're looking good because the offense isn't really good? The offensive line, which I'm sure you're going to get into in a minute, it's still a work in progress. But the defense so far through 12 practices, I mean, they've really impressed me. And it's no knock on Joe Gillespie, the ex-defensive coordinator, but I really feel like the last couple of years playing that 3-3-5, the roster really wasn't built for that. It was kind of a bend, don't break defense. And just even talking to some players, they'll tell you straight up, hey, this defense is fun. This defense allows me to be aggressive. It allows me to get after the quarterback and use my tools that have helped me be successful my whole career. So that's one thing that just really gets the players excited around there. And you could tell just watching camp, those kids are having fun.
Gotcha. And that's important. You getting guys doing what they know how to do with the stuff that they're comfortable at doing and just letting them go play football. It's not that they're not thinking. I know that's kind of cliche. Well, they don't have to think out there. No, they're thinking. They understand what they're supposed to do, but it's things that they're comfortable with doing. That's the most important. Get guys in positions where they're comfortable and let them go play football and let their athleticism take over. That's a lot of what, a defensive coordinator's job is.
Gary Patterson used to tell me all the time, if you have a 4'8" kid that knows what he's doing, he looks like a 4'6" kid on the field. If you have a 4'6" kid that doesn't know what they're doing, he looks like a 4'8" real quick. So that's a big point. If you know what you're doing, your defense is going to be successful. And that's one thing I can say about Johnny Hodges. Johnny Hodges, everyone's trying to figure out, man, how's he beating out Caleb Elam-Zora right now? Because Caleb's a extremely athletic person. But another thing I'll say about the defense, and you can get to your next question, is this defense, Andy Avalos has done a really good job of putting players in position to fit their strengths best. Yeah. So there's certain situational football that maybe Johnny Hodges isn't going to be the best linebacker and Caleb's going to be the best linebacker, or maybe the stud position, Cooper McDonald's not going to be the greatest, so he has Devin Dill. So that's one good thing about this defense so far is you've got some depth that's starting to get built at several key positions.
Gotcha. And again, that's the key, is getting guys in positions to where they can excel, where they're comfortable, and let them just go play as fast as possible. I think that's the one of the main things outside of scheme wise, but that's the other main thing that a defensive coordinator's job is. So moving on, I know you touched on it, the offensive line. I guess it's one of the pitfalls that could be a troubling issue with TCU this season, is trying to get this offensive line rebuilt to where it can be successful. So the offense can be successful. Is that where you and the coaching staff and fans alike are just saying, okay, we got to get some stuff figured out here? It's not that they're bad. It's just, like you mentioned, a work in progress, got to get it better and got to kind of get up to speed a little quicker.
Yeah, they've really showed some flashes through spring camp and fall camp. They do good at opening lanes. They've done well at protecting the quarterbacks. But then there's been other times where, like I said last Friday, they didn't do so well protecting the quarterback. They didn't create those running lanes. So there's a lot of new faces up front. They brought in there's going to be 4 new starting linemen this year that weren't there last year. They have a new left tackle, Bless Harris. They have a new left guard, Remington Strickland, new center, James Brockenmeyer. Colton Deary still competing at that spot, and he's been working with the ones. He's a holdover from last year. So, he could be really the lone starter returning on that offensive line. Then you got Carson Bruno, the Louisiana Tech transfer, then Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols is a guy at right tackle that has been at TCU a long time. He's been there 5 years, and he's got 25 career games under his belt. But every time it seemed like he was ready to get going, he would have a nagging injury and something would just hold him back. And then last year, obviously, he played behind Andrew Coker. So you're playing behind a NFL caliber offensive tackle, but this line just hasn't played a lot of football together. And that's the big key. You want your offensive line to have some sort of chemistry. You want them to have some sort of experience playing together. And really, the offensive line coach, A.J. Ricker, he does a great job of kind of creating these linemen to have some versatility about them. So he'll cross-train some of these guys at guard and a center. So Colton Deary's been working at center. He's been working at left guard. He had Remington Strickland working at center the other day. So I think right now the idea, just like every other program in the country, is just to try to find at least 7, 8, and if the good Lord's blessing you enough, you can maybe have 9 linemen that are good enough to really get out there and have a good, solid rotation on offensive line. I think they're probably about 6 or 7 right now. I really feel like Colton Deary and James Brockenmeyer, that battle is going to go all the way down. We probably won't know who's going to start at center until they actually take that first snap against Stanford. But one way or another, those 5 that I mentioned, Bless Harris, Strickland, Deary, Brockenmeyer, Bruno, Mike Nichols, those are your main guys right now. And right now they're just kind of trying to fill in some depth. I'm concerned about the depth at tackle right now. There's not a lot of football that's been played behind those 2 starters. Ben Taylor Whitfield has a ton of upside. He was a steal out of Duncanville, Texas. I couldn't believe he only had 3 offers, and he ended up playing in just about every game last year as a true freshman. They're extremely high on that kid. Can play some left tackle, can play some left guard. He's kind of another one of those versatile kids. But right now, if you're just asking me, hey, Jeremy, where do you see this offensive line group? I would tell you right now there's maybe 6, 7 guys that I think they can fully trust right now to get out there and just completely be dominant. And
Gotcha.
They may tell you, Ricker may tell you 8 or 9. I don't know, but just from my little bit of football experience and just doing this thing for as long as I have, I think right. Just watching the kind of the way they kind of rotate things, it's those guys that I mentioned that are the top guys.
Gotcha. Well, I guess the bad side is they don't have 8 or 9 guys, but the good side of that is you only need 5 because
Sure.
only 5 can play at a time. So if you can get 5 out there that can help you, that's a good thing. Keeping with the offensive side of the football, moving to skills positions or just in positions in general, is there anything that you've seen so far that fans need to be excited about on the offensive side?
Yeah, I think the main guy right now is Savion Williams. Savion, if you kind of watched his year last year, started real slow the first 6 games. The last 6 games, he really turned it on. Anyone that watched that game against Texas, everyone was asking, who in the world is number 3? Where'd that guy come from? And it's no coincidence his numbers started going up when Josh Hoover became the starting quarterback. That's not a knock against Chandler Morris, but it's in the pudding. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Right. Savion's production increased when Josh Hoover took over at quarterback, and Josh loves throwing to Savion. They've got a pretty good connection going on right now in fall camp. Savion's probably had the best camp I've ever seen him have in the last 5 years. He's participating more last year. It was kind of a load management type deal. It didn't really seem like he was doing a lot of team stuff, team install, didn't do a lot of team tempo stuff. And then that might have had a reason why he started off slow to begin the season. But now he's doing all these drills. He's doing the one-on-ones. He's excelling, going up for balls. Getting the thing I really like about Savion, he's 6'5", he's 225, and he can run. I mean, he's a very athletic guy. So when NFL scouts come out to TCU practices, it doesn't take long for them to kind of all huddle up around the receivers to start watching Savion, because he's just built different than a lot of receivers around the Big 12. And the good thing about it is he's very athletic, very fast, and they're going to utilize that, and they'd be fools not to. So Josh Hoover knows where number 3 is going to be every time, and I would imagine the goal every game is to get him as many targets as they could possibly get him, to get him involved. But the running back room is still really inexperienced, but I think it's really talented. Cam Cook is a guy that people keep talking about. And Cam, we watched last year. We 2 years ago, they had Kendre Miller and Amari DeMercado. Those 2 guys especially Miller, could take the little 10-yard runs. And if you miss a tackle, next thing you know, he's going 70 yards downfield. Right. Amani Bailey, as good as he was last year, 1,000-yard rusher, he really didn't have that pure breakaway speed. Had a lot of long runs, but just didn't have that clear breakaway speed. And that's something different that Cam Cook brings to this running back roster. If you watched him in spring camp and early on in fall camp, I mean, this guy is taking those runs and taking them 60, 65 yards to the house. So he's got a little bit more of a burst than what Amani Bailey had. I think he's a little bit more versatile. He's really good in catching the ball. He's good at pass protecting. So he's kind of a mix of everything you want in a running back. The only problem is he's got 16 total carries in his career. So doesn't have a lot of experience, but the sky's the limit for this kid. He's got a very high ceiling. He's going to make some plays this year. He's going to have some games where they may feed him the ball 6-7 times in a row. They did the other night to open this scrimmage. I mean, Kendall Browse was not afraid to give Cam Cook the football, and he's answering the call. I mean, he's doing really well. But the receiver room, I'll stick with the running back room. Trey Sanders is back. Trey is kind of your short yardage back. They got Dominique Richardson through the transfer portal. One guy, the 2 young freshmen, Jeremy Payne and Nate Palmer. Jeremy Payne he arrived in the summer, but he's a guy that everyone's just kind of, hey, keep an eye on this kid. He's got something to him. I would say he's probably the most electric running back they have on the roster. He is quick. He can cut on a dime, and got some first team reps the other day. And he took a little, what looked to be about a 5-yard gain up the middle, and turned it and took it to the house. So he's got some speed about him. But the receiver room is very experienced. Yeah, in addition to Savion, you got JP Richardson, you've got Jack Besh, you've got Eric McAllister at Z that they brought in from Boise State, was very productive. And another guy that people just kind of forget because he didn't play a lot last year is Dalen Wright. Dalen Wright was a top 10 receiver in the nation when he came out of high school, had signed with A&M, played there 1 year, transferred to Minnesota, and then now he's at TCU, and missed most of the season, like I said, last year, but he is very physical, 6'3", 215 kid, can run, can go up and catch the ball just like Savion and Eric McAllister. So they're really good at X and Z. They're really good on the slot. They're good at quarterback with Josh Hoover. He's making some good plays. He's been healthy all summer and fall camp. The biggest question for me right now, though, is that offensive line. And everyone knows that's played the game of football. And if you coach the game of football, whether it's Pee Wee or NFL, if you don't have a good O-line, D-line, you might as well just wad up that playbook and move on.
No, you're exactly right. Can't get a whole lot done without a good offensive line, and you can't stop people if you don't have a good defensive line. So I totally understand. You mentioned Stanford a couple of different times here, obviously because it's the first game. But is there a game on TCU's schedule that you, maybe the coaching staff, more importantly, or maybe even fans, but are thinking that this could be, the game? I don't want to say that defines TCU's season, Jeremy, because I think it's way too early for something like that. But is there a game that says, okay, we go win this game, we may have something here? Is there a game right now that you could probably or would like or can pinpoint to kind of put out there that say, okay, you know what? If we go win this game, we've got something.
Yeah, there's a few games on the schedule. I kind of feel like that. I think UCF early on, playing them at home, because I think Central Florida can be pretty good. I think with Gus Malzahn, you've got KJ there now, so it's going to be an improved UCF team, and they've got athletes. Florida has athletes. They've got a roster full of Florida athletes. So I'm glad that TCU gets to play them at home and play them early. I think SMU is going to be tough, Brian. I think SMU's built a really good roster. That's a rivalry game, and really SMU's got a pretty good schedule. And I think it's not necessarily a measuring stick game, but if they go out there and beat SMU pretty handily, I think that says a lot. But if you were to ask me, I need one game that's going to tell how good this team is, I would say it's on the road in Utah. It's on the road in Salt Lake City. Utah is your big dog in the conference, predicted to finish in the Big 12 title game. Cameron Rising's coming back. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. It's tough to play up in Salt Lake City. The good thing, TCU has history. None of these kids do, but TCU historically has done well. They've played well up in Salt Lake City. Had a couple tough losses, that kept them out of BCS bowl, back early on. But that game's going to be really telling. I think if you can go up, you get a bye week before that game. If you can go up and beat Utah, which I think Utah is going to be really, really good, that's going to be the game where you're going to sit back and say TCU has a chance to really, really make it to Arlington and maybe beyond that. But it's going to be a tough schedule. They've got some really tough games. Kansas and Arrowhead is not going to be easy. How crazy is that to say? You wouldn't be saying that 4 years ago about Kansas, but Jalen Daniels is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Neal's one of the best running backs, and Jeff's done a really good job up there coaching that program and making Kansas a really good opponent. I mean, he's building that program. They got a brand new stadium because of getting built because of what he's done. But the good thing about some of these games, they get Arizona at home, they get Oklahoma State at home. Those are two other top 5 teams in the Big 12 right now. Texas Tech's at home. That's always a tough game. So the schedule, I like it. And I think it sets them up pretty nicely to get in that 7 to 9 win range. Mm-hmm. But there's just there's going to be a lot of things we'll learn from that first game against Stanford, because it's a ACC opponent. It's almost crazy to say that when they came out with that. I completely forgot Stanford was ACC when what are you talking about ACC? But Stanford's going to be improved. Their physical team, and I can't wait, man. It's just, you always hear you can't really judge kids on practices. You judge them on Saturdays, and that's going to be the first thing. There's going to be people if they win big, they're going 13-0. That's all they can do. If they lose, then they're lucky to win 4 games. There's going to be a lot of highs and lows that first game.
Absolutely. Well, and that was the thing. On the Big 12 Insider Show, I had the TCU SMU game as one of the best non-conference games, not just for TCU, but just for the conference. because it's like you said, SMU is going to be pretty good. They got a good roster. They're in the ACC now. It's a rivalry game, but I think it's an opportunity for TCU to take a step forward and kind of smack them around. I'm not saying the game they should blow them out or anything like that. I'm just saying this is an opportunity for TCU to take a step forward and kind of put their stamp and say, well, hold on a second. We're if SMU is supposed to be this in the ACC, if that's what you think, well, we're better than they are. And we're going to have something to say about this whole Big 12 thing. I think it's a big opportunity there. And also, their TCU schedule, like you said, it's a challenging schedule. And if they can navigate it the right way, they got a shot. They really do have a shot, Jeremy. I just think there's going to be a lot of bounce back from last year. It's like you said, there's so many the close games that they had. They just didn't win the close games. Could have been an 8-4 season, which is crazy to think that small a margin separated them from winning 8 games, but it's just the truth. But it also goes to show you they weren't that far away. They just weren't that far away. So regardless of the record, last thing here, and then I'll get you out of here. What does it look like, Jeremy? What would a TCU, if the season is successful, what does that actually look like moving forward? I know that's kind of a weird or maybe even a complex question. Obviously, hey, they win every game. It's that's a successful season. But what does a successful season actually look like with TCU that fans, coaches, and players and everybody could actually live with?
I should give you the hypothetical I gave on my site because it drove a lot of people crazy, but sure. I won't do that. It's a very long one because the TCU fans seem to think if they can get back to a bowl game, maybe win 8 to 9 games, including a bowl win, that should be classified as a successful season. That's a 4-win improvement. But I did the hypothetical, just talking back about SMU. I said, well, let's say TCU goes 11-1. They make it to the Big 12 championship. They lose in the Big 12 championship. So they're 11-2. They get held out of the playoffs, but they go to a bowl game. They win that bowl game. They finish 12-2. But their loss is to SMU, and SMU goes to the playoffs. Is that a successful season? They all said, nope, that's not good enough. So that's how it works. But I think the mark, to me personally, if they get out there and they can go 8-5, 9-4, I think that's a good season. I really do. And do I think they're capable of doing that? Absolutely. I think schedule-wise, they can win every game. I'm not going to sit on here and say they're going to go 12-0, but there's not one game that I think, no, they're not. There's no way they're going to win that game. Right. There's not one game that I think they're not going to stand a chance. They're going to be in every game. Now, a lot of that depends on health.
Sure.
Of their team, sure. Other teams, there's in the Big 12. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. This is a big time parity league. It is a if you're not on your A game, you're going to lose to a team that's in the bottom of the conference one weekend.
Yep.
So it's a game where it's a conference really where you have to play good football and you have to win the turnover battle every week to have a chance. And that's a good conference. I mean, that's every coach talked about it at Big 12 Media Days. Hey, this is a parity league. And that's the big thing for TCU. They're going to have some close games. 2022, they were the heart attack team. Everyone loved watching TCU because they knew there was going to be drama at the end of the game because that's just how they played. Last year, it was the same way. Like you said, they just didn't finish. This year, it would be nice if they didn't have those type of games and kind of get a 2-touchdown cushion. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a bad team. There's some really good teams in this conference.
Well, and it just like you said, the parity in the conference looks. I think a lot of the games within the Big 12 are going to be close. Number one, people outside the conference are going to think, well, that means nobody's any good. That's not what that means at all. It means there's a lot of good teams, and everybody can't win. That's the whole thing with all these close games. Somebody's going to lose these games. There's going to be somebody, Jeremy, in this conference that wins 4 games, but the difference between them winning 4 games and winning 8 games is kind of like TCU last year. It's going to be like 12 points. something like that. And that's just the way that it works. Unfortunately, everybody can't win every single game. So thank you, my man, for giving me the time and coming on here and talking a little TCU football. I appreciate it. We will have you back as much as you can be back. So on the show. So we appreciate you talking here and talking a little TCU. I just think TCU is in for a bounce back season. I think too many athletes, too good at coaching. I just believe that they're going to get back. What that looks like, I don't know. But, 2 years ago, if you'd have told me that TCU was going to be in the national championship game to start the season, I'd have laughed right in your face. And they were. So, who knows what can happen in this crazy college football world, man. So, again, I really, really do appreciate your time, Jeremy.
Hey, man, anytime. Enjoy what you do, man. You do awesome stuff, and look forward to being on again.